ever wonder what happens when you cross a prosecutor with a politician and add the kind of laugh that could power a small wind farm? Today, we're diving into the mind of someone whose career path looks like it was designed by an overachieving GPS that refuses to take shortcuts. Welcome back to another episode of me cosplaying as a therapist with the credentials of a grocery store psychic. Today, we're excavating the psychological archaeology of Kamala Harris, and buckle up because this woman's personality has more layers than a Pinterest wedding cake. Before we start this unprofessional psychological excavation, smash that comment button and tell me what other public figures need the discount therapy treatment. I'm always hunting for new subjects to wildly overanalyze while my own life falls apart. And don't forget to subscribe, because apparently my psychology degree from YouTube University doesn't pay the bills. Now, let's talk about Kamala Harris. Born on October the 20th, 1964 in Oakland, California, to parents who probably never imagined their daughter would one day become the person everyone either loves to quote or loves to meme. Her mother, Shamala, was a biomedical scientist from India, and her father, Donald, was an economics professor from Jamaica. So right off the bat, we're dealing with someone who grew up in a household where intellectual achievement wasn't just encouraged, it was basically the family business. Picture this. Little Kamala growing up in a home where dinner conversations probably sounded like academic conferences, where success wasn't just expected but assumed, and where being anything less than exceptional would have felt like letting down two very accomplished parents. This kind of environment tends to produce what psychologists call high achievers with perfectionist tendencies, or as I like to call them, people who make the rest of us feel bad about our life choices. You might think growing up with such accomplished parents would make someone humble, right? Well, let me introduce you to something I call inherited confidence syndrome. When you're raised by people who excel at everything they touch, you tend to develop this unshakable belief that excellence is your natural state. It's like being born thinking you're supposed to be the smartest person in the room, which explains a lot about Harris's career trajectory. Now, let's talk about that laugh. Oh, sweet mother of viral content, that laugh. It sounds like what would happen if you mixed a wind chime with a nervous breakdown and set it to autoplay during congressional hearings. If laughter is the best medicine, then Harris's laugh is basically psychological ibuprofen designed to treat the specific headache of someone just asked me a question I really don't want to answer right now. This laugh appears with the reliability of a Swiss watch and the timing of a smoke detector battery dying at 3 a.m. Watch any interview where she's cornered with an awkward question, and boom, there it is, buying her precious seconds while the rest of us try to figure out if we missed the punchline to a joke that apparently only exists in her head. It's like her brain installed this emergency laugh protocol that activates whenever her internal panic button gets pressed. The laugh essentially translates to error 404, appropriate response not found deploying diversionary giggling sequence. Speaking of defense mechanisms, let's examine her communication style, which I can only describe as prosecutor meets motivational speaker meets that friend who over-explains why they're 5 minutes late. Harris has this fascinating way of speaking that sounds like she's simultaneously giving a closing argument, running for student body president, and explaining to her mother why she deserves a later curfew. Every statement feels like it was crafted by a committee of very anxious lawyers, focus grouped by political consultants, and then rehearsed in front of a mirror until it achieved the perfect balance of authoritative and relatable. It's like she's perpetually delivering a TED Talk titled, "Why I Am Qualified to Have This Conversation." But here's where it gets psychologically delicious. When you spend decades building legal cases and cross-examining people for a living, your brain basically gets rewired to treat every conversation like a potential courtroom drama. This creates what I'm calling prosecutorial personality syndrome, which absolutely should be in the next edition of the Psychological Diagnostic Manual. People with this condition compulsively over-prepare for conversations about what to have for lunch, treat casual small talk like depositions, and have this irresistible urge to cite sources when discussing the weather. You could ask Harris what she thought about the latest Marvel movie, and she'd probably respond with a 17-point analysis covering character development, narrative structure, and the broader implications for American cinema, complete with supporting evidence from film criticism and box office data. Now, you might be wondering about her relationship with authority and power, and oh boy, is this where things get spicy. Here's someone who basically speed-ran the American political hierarchy like she was trying to set a world record. District attorney to attorney general to senator to vice president, all while making it look easier than assembling IKEA furniture with the actual instructions. Harris displays textbook symptoms of what I'm calling a competence addiction, which is basically when someone becomes physically uncomfortable in any situation where they're not the most qualified person present. It's like she needs to be the valedictorian of every room she enters, except the rooms keep getting bigger and the other students keep getting more impressive degrees. This manifests in her tendency to turn simple questions into comprehensive lectures, as if she's genuinely worried that people might not realize she's done her homework. Ask her about climate change, and she doesn't just give you her position. She provides the geological history of carbon dioxide, references to peer-reviewed studies, and probably throws in some thoughts about renewable energy infrastructure for good measure. It's simultaneously impressive and exhausting, like having a conversation with someone who's permanently stuck in dissertation defense mode. Let's talk about her relationship with public perception, which is more complex than a Christopher Nolan movie, and twice as confusing. Harris seems to possess this supernatural awareness of how every micro-expression, word choice, and outfit selection will be dissected by the internet's amateur body language experts and professional political commentators. This creates what I like to call hypervigilant authenticity syndrome, where someone is so conscious of being perceived as genuine that they accidentally create the exact opposite effect. It's like trying to act natural when you know someone's watching you, except the someone is literally millions of people with smartphones and strong opinions about everything. You can see this psychological tap dance in how she approaches every public interaction like it's a final exam, where the wrong answer could end up as someone's doctoral thesis on political communication failures. She's simultaneously trying to connect with regular humans while also ensuring that nothing she says can be weaponized by opposition researchers who probably have her high school yearbook quotes memorized. The hilarious thing is, this prosecutorial precision probably made her an absolute machine in courtrooms, where every word literally is being recorded and could determine whether someone goes to prison or goes home. But in politics, where people are desperately searching for someone who seems like a real human being instead of a carefully programmed political android, this level of calculated communication can make her seem about as spontaneous as a tax return. Someone recently asked me if Harris shows signs of imposter syndrome, and honestly that's like asking if fish show signs of being wet. Here's someone who has basically collected achievement badges in every possible category of American success, yet she still moves through the world with this subtle defensiveness, like she's perpetually expecting someone to ask to see her credentials. This probably stems from being a woman of colour in professional spaces that have historically been more exclusive than a country club membership committee. When you're frequently the only person who looks like you in rooms full of people making important decisions, you develop this psychological armour where you feel like you need to be twice as prepared, 3 times as competent, and 4 times as careful just to be taken seriously. It's like playing a video game where everyone else is on easy mode, but you're stuck on expert difficulty, and the only way to survive is to become absolutely perfect at everything. This creates a constant background hum of stress that can manifest in over-preparation so intense it would make a NASA mission planner look casual. You can see this in how she responds to criticism. Instead of the political standard of either ignoring attacks or firing back with equally aggressive responses, Harris tends to construct these elaborate defensive fortresses made entirely of facts, figures, and supporting documentation. It's like she's trying to win a debate that never actually ends, which is both admirable and exhausting to witness. Now, let's examine her decision-making patterns, which are more methodical than a Swiss watchmaker with obsessive-compulsive disorder. Harris approaches decisions like she's preparing for the legal case of the century, gathering evidence with the thoroughness of someone who knows that every choice will be scrutinized by people whose job it is to find fault with everything. Watch her in situations requiring quick responses, and you can practically see the mental flowchart activating. It's like she has this internal committee of very nervous advisors all shouting different suggestions while she tries to calculate the optimal response that offends the fewest people and provides the most defensible position. This creates these genuinely entertaining moments where she'll pause for what feels like geological time periods before answering questions that most people would respond to faster than a reflex test. Ask her about her favourite ice cream flavour, and she looks like she's trying to determine the geopolitical implications of choosing vanilla over chocolate. Her relationship with humour is particularly fascinating, like watching someone who learned to be funny by studying comedy through a microscope and taking detailed notes. Harris clearly understands that humour is crucial for human connection, but her approach to being amusing feels like she reverse-engineered the concept of laughter from a research paper titled "The Strategic Implementation of Levity in Professional Communication." This results in these perfectly calibrated jokes that hit all the technical requirements for humour, but somehow feel like they were crafted in a laboratory by very serious scientists wearing lab coats. The timing is mathematically precise. The content is demographically appropriate, but something about the delivery makes you suspect she practiced the punchline 17 times in front of a focus group. It's not that she's genuinely unfunny, it's that her comedy feels filtered through the same prosecutorial precision that governs everything else she does. Every joke seems designed to accomplish multiple objectives simultaneously: be entertaining, make a political point, demonstrate relatability, and avoid offending anyone who might vote in the next election. It's like trying to be spontaneous while following a very detailed instruction manual. You might wonder how someone develops such an intensely controlled public persona, and the answer probably lies in spending years in a profession where literally every word you say in public can impact active criminal cases, future prosecutions, and whether dangerous people end up back on the streets. When your casual comments can accidentally torpedo ongoing investigations, you develop the kind of verbal discipline that would make a monk look chatty. Add to this over a decade in politics, where everything you've ever said gets recorded, archived, and potentially remixed into attack ads by people with unlimited time and very creative video editing skills. And you get someone who has trained themselves to speak like they're constantly being cross-examined by a hostile attorney with a perfect memory and a grudge. This level of self-control is genuinely impressive from a professional standpoint, but it can make authentic human connection about as likely as finding a unicorn at a gas station. People are naturally drawn to vulnerability and spontaneity, but when you're perpetually in "everything I say might end up in a congressional hearing" mode, letting your guard down becomes a luxury you literally cannot afford. Let's talk about her leadership style, because this reveals a lot about her psychological makeup. Harris tends to lead from the front, taking responsibility for decisions and outcomes in a way that suggests she's more comfortable being accountable than delegating authority. This is classic control orientation, where someone feels safer when they can directly influence outcomes rather than trusting others to handle important tasks. This manifests in her tendency to be extremely prepared for every public appearance, to know the details of every policy she discusses, and to have talking points ready for questions she might face. It's like she's trying to eliminate as many variables as possible from every situation, which is understandable but also slightly exhausting to watch. You can see this in how she handles press conferences and interviews. She doesn't just answer questions, she provides context, background information, and supporting evidence for even simple statements. It's like she's building a legal brief in real time, which is thorough but not always necessary for casual political discourse. Her relationship with criticism is particularly revealing from a psychological perspective. Rather than dismissing attacks or responding with counterattacks, Harris tends to address criticism systematically, point by point, as if she's refuting arguments in a legal brief. This suggests someone who takes opposition very seriously and feels compelled to respond to every challenge to her competence or character. This defensive approach probably stems from years of experience where failing to address criticism could have serious professional consequences. As a prosecutor, if you don't respond to challenges to your case, you might lose the trial. In politics, the stakes feel similarly high even when they're not. The result is someone who seems to take every political attack personally, not because she's thin-skinned, but because she's trained herself to view unopposed criticism as a professional failure. It's like she's still fighting cases in a courtroom where silence equals defeat. Now, someone might ask whether Harris shows signs of perfectionism. And the answer is obviously yes, but it's a very specific type of perfectionism. She doesn't seem obsessed with getting every detail right for its own sake, but rather with avoiding any mistakes that could be used to question her competence or qualifications. This is what psychologists call performance perfectionism, where the drive for excellence is motivated by external validation rather than internal standards. You can see this in how she prepares for public appearances, how she crafts her statements, and how she responds when things don't go according to plan. When Harris makes a mistake or has an awkward moment, she doesn't just move on, she seems to mentally catalogue what went wrong and how to prevent it from happening again. It's like she's constantly updating her internal playbook based on feedback from every public interaction. Her communication style reveals someone who has learned to view every conversation as a potential opportunity or threat. This creates this interesting dynamic where she's simultaneously trying to connect with people and protect herself from criticism. You can hear it in how she structures her sentences, starting with safe, agreeable statements before building toward more controversial or specific points. It's like she's testing the waters with every phrase, gauging reactions before committing to stronger positions. This makes her seem cautious and calculated, which can be frustrating for people who want more direct, spontaneous communication from their political leaders. But from a psychological standpoint, this approach makes perfect sense for someone who has spent their career in high-stakes environments where every word matters and mistakes can have serious consequences. Let's examine her relationship with authenticity, because this is where her psychological profile gets really complex. Harris seems to understand that people want authentic leaders, but her definition of authenticity appears to be being genuinely committed to the positions I'm articulating, rather than sharing unfiltered thoughts and emotions. This creates moments where she's clearly being sincere about her beliefs and values, but the delivery feels so polished and practiced that it doesn't register as authentic to audiences who are looking for more spontaneous, unguarded moments. It's like she's trapped between her professional training, which emphasizes careful, precise communication, and the political reality that voters connect with leaders who seem more naturally human and relatable. You might think that someone with such a controlled public persona would struggle with spontaneous situations, but Harris actually handles unexpected moments quite well, just in a very particular way. Instead of panicking or freezing up, she tends to default to what I call professional autopilot, where she falls back on standard responses and talking points while her brain processes the new situation. This creates these amusing moments where she'll give perfectly coherent but slightly generic responses to unexpected questions, like her mind accessed the closest relevant file in her mental database and started reading from it while she figured out what was actually being asked. It's not that she can't think on her feet, it's that her version of thinking on her feet involves quickly categorizing new information and responding with something safe and defensible rather than something spontaneous and potentially risky. Her relationship with power is fascinating from a psychological standpoint. Harris seems to view political power as a tool for implementing specific policies and outcomes, rather than as something to be enjoyed or displayed for its own sake. This suggests someone with what psychologists call instrumental orientation toward authority, where leadership positions are valued for what they allow you to accomplish, rather than for the status they provide. You can see this in how she talks about her various roles, always focusing on what she was able to achieve or change, rather than on the prestige or influence that came with the position. It's like she views her career as a series of opportunities to solve problems, rather than as a climb up a social or political hierarchy. This probably stems from her background in prosecution, where your job is to use the authority of your office to achieve specific outcomes, not to enjoy being important or powerful for its own sake. As we wrap up this completely unauthorized and thoroughly unqualified psychological excavation, let's consider what Harris's personality profile tells us about surviving in modern American politics. She's essentially someone who has weaponized preparation, turned caution into an art form, and developed the kind of professional armor that could probably deflect small meteorites. This approach has obviously served her well, allowing her to navigate multiple career transitions that would destroy most people and handle public scrutiny so intense it would make reality TV contestants cry. But it also creates this fascinating paradox where we're constantly watching the professional performance of Kamala Harris, rather than catching glimpses of the actual human being who presumably exists somewhere underneath all that careful political calculation. From a purely observational standpoint, she's like someone who became so skilled at being a public figure that the line between her authentic self and her professional persona has been blurred beyond recognition. Which, let's be honest, might be exactly the kind of psychological adaptation you need to survive in a political environment where every human moment gets turned into content for people like me to overanalyze on the internet. That's all for today's completely unhinged psychological speculation session. Remember, I have exactly 0 qualifications to diagnose anyone's personality, but I do have strong opinions, access to Google, and apparently the confidence to share my half-baked theories with strangers on the internet, which in 2025 basically makes me an expert. If you enjoyed this thoroughly irresponsible personality breakdown, make sure to subscribe for more content where I pretend to understand human psychology while having learned everything I know from watching cable news and reading the comment sections of political videos. Until next time, remember that we're all just trying to figure out what makes people tick, and some of us are just significantly louder about our completely unqualified theories than others. Also, if any actual psychologists are watching this, I'm sorry for whatever damage I've done to your profession, and please don't sue me because I'm definitely not rich enough to make it worth your time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, where I continue my streak of psychological commentary that would probably get me kicked out of any respectable academic institution.